The experiment looked simple. A glass chamber, a pump, silence. But when Robert Boyle removed the air, something unexpected happened. Life stopped. A flame died. A sound vanished. A bird collapsed. In that moment, Boyle realized something that would change science forever. Air was not empty. It was powerful. And it obeyed rules. Long before laboratories became clean and controlled, Boyle worked in rooms filled with uncertainty, religious doubt, political tension, and fragile instruments that often failed. He lived in a world where nature was still explained through authority. Aristotle's words mattered more than observation. Boyle would quietly dismantle that tradition. Born into immense wealth in Ireland, Robert Boyle could have lived comfortably without ever questioning the world. His father was one of the richest men in the British Isles. Boyle never needed science for survival. Yet comfort never interested him. From an early age, Boyle was drawn not to answers, but to how answers were claimed. Tutors noticed his unusual patience. While others rushed to conclusions, Boyle lingered over experiments, repeating them again and again, suspicious of results that appeared to clean. Rare fact number 1. Boyle often distrusted his own successful experiments and repeated them until failure appeared. Believing truth only emerges when results survive doubt. As a teenager, Boyle traveled across Europe during a time of war and instability. He witnessed cities collapse, ideas clash, and religious certainty turn violent. These experiences shaped him deeply. He began to suspect that certainty, when untested, was dangerous. This suspicion would guide his entire life. Unlike many scientists of his time, Boyle did not believe nature revealed itself as he believed it resisted human arrogance. Knowledge, he argued, must be earned through humility. That humility defined his method. When Boyle later joined the group that would become the Royal Society, he resisted philosophical speculation. While others debated why nature behaved as it did, Boyle focused on how it behaved and whether claims could be repeated. Rare fact number 2. Boyle insisted that experiments must be described in such detail that even rivals could reproduce them. A radical idea at the time. This insistence changed science forever. But Boyle was not just a scientist, he was a deeply religious man. And this is where the tension begins. Boyle did not see science and faith as enemies. He believed studying nature was a form of worship, that understanding the laws of matter honored the intelligence of its creator. Rare fact number 3. Boyle spent a significant portion of his fortune funding translations of the Bible into multiple languages. Believing knowledge, both scientific and spiritual, should be accessible. This dual devotion made him difficult to categorize. He rejected superstition, but he rejected atheism just as firmly. To Boyle, both were forms of intellectual laziness. His most famous contribution, what we now call Boyle's Law, emerged not from theoretical brilliance, but mechanical frustration. Early air pumps leaked. Measurements were inconsistent. Results contradicted expectations. Instead of abandoning the work, Boyle leaned into the chaos. He noticed a pattern. Pressure increased. Volume decreased. Not always perfectly, but consistently enough to demand attention. Rare fact number 4. Boyle hesitated to publish his law because he believed it was incomplete, referring to it only as an experimental relation, not a universal truth. That hesitation reflects his character. Boyle feared false certainty more than ignorance. As his reputation grew, so did resistance. Traditional scholars accused him of reducing nature to machines. They argued that explaining the world through matter and motion stripped it of meaning. Boyle disagreed. He believed mystery did not disappear with explanation. It deepened. Boyle's laboratory became a space where philosophy, theology, and mechanics collided. His assistant recorded not just successes, but failures, something almost unheard of at the time. Rare fact number 5. Boyle intentionally published failed experiments to warn future scientists against false conclusions. This honesty cost him prestige, but it built trust. Yet Boyle's world was not peaceful. England was torn by civil war, religious conflict, and shifting power. Authority itself was unstable, and Boyle understood that science could not survive under dogma. Truth needed protection. This realization pushed him toward institutional science. Communities of verification rather than isolated genius. Science, Boyle believed, should be social, but carefully. Rare fact number 6. Boyle avoided public debates, believing performance corrupted inquiry. Behind his calm demeanor was a quiet urgency. Boyle feared that science, like religion, could become authoritarian if it stopped questioning itself. Nature, he believed, did not care about human pride. It responded only to patience. In his later writings, Boyle warned against turning scientific laws into metaphysical certainties. Laws describe behavior, not essence. That distinction mattered. Rare fact number 7. Boyle rejected the idea that science could reveal ultimate causes, insisting it only uncovers regularities, patterns, not purposes. This restraint separated him from many contemporaries. It also protected science from ideology. By the end of Chapter 1, Robert Boyle emerges not as a heroic inventor, but as something rarer, a disciplined skeptic, a man wealthy enough to avoid truth, yet humble enough to chase it. And this is only the beginning, because Boyle's greatest struggle was not with nature, but with how humans misuse knowledge once they believe they understand it. Ideas do not become dangerous when they are wrong. They become dangerous when they are tested. By the time Robert Boyle's experiments began circulating through Europe, science was no longer just curiosity. It was becoming power, and power always attracts resistance. Boyle understood this instinctively. He lived in an age where authority was fragile. Kings were executed, churches split, certainty shattered overnight. In such a world, knowledge that did not rely on tradition felt threatening, almost rebellious. Boyle never intended to rebel, but truth rarely asks for permission. As Boyle's experimental method gained influence, critics accused him of stripping nature of meaning. They argued that reducing the world to particles, pressure, and motion would destroy morality, faith, and order itself. Boyle found this accusation revealing. They feared not science, but loss of control. He believed that when authority depends on mystery, clarity feels like violence. Boyle was privately concerned that scientific discoveries could be misused to dominate rather than understand nature, a fear he expressed in personal correspondence rather than public writing. This fear shaped his restraint. Unlike later scientists, Boyle did not rush to explain everything. He deliberately avoided grand theories. His writing was cautious, filled with conditions, exceptions, and uncertainty. Many readers found this frustrating. Boyle considered it honest. He believed that once knowledge pretends to be complete, it becomes ideology. The Royal Society, of which Boyle was a founding figure, was born out of this tension. It was created not to defend conclusions, but to protect process. Experiments would be shared, repeated, criticized, and corrected. Truth would be provisional. This was revolutionary, not because it offered answers, but because it refused final ones. Boyle insisted that experiments must be open to doubt, even after success. A result was not truth simply because it worked once. Nature, he believed, enjoyed humbling humans. This humility made Boyle an awkward figure in public debates. He refused spectacle. He avoided intellectual showmanship. He preferred slow accumulation over dramatic claims. Boyle often allowed others to receive credit for experimental improvements, believing recognition distracted from inquiry. Yet, restraint did not protect him from conflict. Alchemists accused Boyle of betrayal. Traditional philosophers accused him of reductionism. Religious extremists accused him of undermining faith. Boyle stood quietly between them. He argued that superstition weakened faith more than science ever could. False miracles, he believed, made belief fragile. True faith could survive truth. But Boyle's caution extended beyond religion. He feared the misuse of scientific authority just as much as he feared dogma. He warned that experimental success could intoxicate thinkers, leading them to overreach. Laws of nature, Boyle insisted, describe regularities, not ultimate realities. This distinction mattered. Because once laws are mistaken for truth itself, humans stop questioning. And questioning, Boyle believed, was the soul of inquiry. As scientific instruments improved, Boyle noticed something troubling. Experiments were becoming cleaner, faster, and more persuasive. But thinkers were becoming less patient. Results were celebrated, limitations ignored. Boyle feared a future where technique replaced judgment, where science became confident enough to forget its own uncertainty. Near the end of his life, Robert Boyle stopped chasing discovery, not because curiosity left him, but because responsibility stayed. He had seen enough certainty mistaken for wisdom, enough knowledge mistaken for authority, enough progress mistaken for virtue. Boyle understood something many innovators never do. Ideas do not end where they are proven. They begin where humans decide how to use them. By his final years, Boyle was no longer the young experimenter emptying air from glass chambers. He was a watcher, a guardian of limits, a man deeply aware that modern science, the very thing he helped birth, was growing faster than humility could follow, and that frightened him. Boyle had lived through intellectual revolutions before. He had watched religious certainty fracture into violence. He had seen political authority collapse under its own rigidity. He knew what happens when belief, scientific or spiritual, hardens into dogma. Truth, once untouchable, becomes dangerous. This awareness shaped Boyle's final works. He wrote less about discovery and more about restraint, less about laws and more about responsibility. He reminded readers, quietly, but insistently, that science does not replace judgment. It demands Italiano. One of the most revealing decisions Boyle made late in life was to refuse honors that would have cemented his authority. When offered positions of influence, he declined without spectacle. Not from modesty. From fear. He believed authority corrupts inquiry even when intentions are pure. Boyle did not want his name to end debates. He wanted it to provoke caution. In private writings, Boyle expressed concern that science might become the new unquestionable doctrine, replacing theology not with wisdom, but with confidence. He warned that when people stop questioning methods because results work, thinking begins to decay. Effectiveness is not truth. It is temptation. As illness slowed his body, Boyle's mind remained sharp. He revised texts obsessively, removing language that sounded too final. He feared absolute claims more than errors. Errors could be corrected. Certainty could not. Boyle believed that the true danger of science was not that it would fail, but that it would succeed too easily. Success seduces. It convinces humans they are wiser than they are. This belief shaped Boyle's legacy more than Boyle's law ever did. Though his name is etched into physics textbooks, his deeper influence lies elsewhere, in the structure of scientific humility, repeatability, transparency, admission of failure. These were not technical choices. They were moral ones. Boyle believed truth survives only when it is allowed to be questioned, even after it appears settled. As modern science expanded, Boyle's influence quietly embedded itself into practice rather than ideology. Laboratories adopted methods he helped normalize. Journals inherited his insistence on detailed reporting. Communities of verification replaced lone authority. But Boyle knew something unsettling. Methods can survive even when values fade. The structure of science might endure while its humility disappears. That was his final fear. Near the end, Boyle turned increasingly toward questions of human character, not morality imposed by doctrine, but restraint, shaped by awareness. He believed humans were capable of incredible understanding, and equally capable of misusing it. The same mind that unlocks nature's patterns can justify cruelty if unexamined. Science does not prevent this. Only humility does. When Robert Boyle died, there was no dramatic farewell, no final declaration, no attempt to define his own importance. He left behind experiments, writings, and questions, but no answers meant to close inquiry. That, for Boyle, was success. Today, we remember Boyle as a founder of modern science, but that title hides his most radical contribution. He taught humanity how to hesitate, to pause before declaring mastery, to doubt before celebrating certainty, to recognize that knowing how something works does not grant permission to control it. In an age obsessed with innovation, Boyle's quiet warning feels almost subversive. Progress without humility becomes arrogance. Knowledge without restraint becomes power. Power without conscience becomes ruin. Boyle never rejected progress. He simply refused to worship it. He understood that the real experiment was never in the glass chamber. It was in the human mind. And that experiment, he believed, would never be finished, because the question Boyle leaves us with is not scientific. It is ethical. What do you do once you know? Do you dominate? Do you exploit? Do you declare certainty? Or do you both? Acknowledging that understanding carries obligation. Robert Boyle did not give us answers. He gave us a standard, and he trusted future generations to decide whether they were worthy of it.